Hi, everybody. This is Julissa. Thank you again so much for coming back to my podcast. I want to continue and give you part two, and hopefully, it's the final part of me speaking about our growing up in Zona Colonial in the Dominican Republic and having a crazy man as our next door neighbor. And if you heard part one, I finished up by saying that we were just returning back home. It was late at night. I remember being super tired. We just, me, my mom, my sister, and then my mom's cousin and her kids, we have just gone down to Plaza España because my mom's cousin was coming from New York City to visit us, and we wanted just to, enjoy the day, do some sightseeing, and we live in a very tourist area, so there's a lot to do, and we wanted to get the most out of it. And in those days, we didn't have cell phones, so and we didn't have a car. My mom didn't own a car, so we were just walking everywhere we had to go. Especially if it was within 30 minutes. If it was something far away, we would definitely take a taxi. But like I said, we live in a very exclusive area of the Dominican Republic where there was a lot of sightseeing, a lot of tourists all the time. You will see tourists every day, and tour guides and tour buses, and a lot of foreign people speaking English too, walking down the streets. And so we enjoy taking always every time we had like visitors come over, we enjoy taking them out and showing and going places within walking distance. So that night, I remember coming back being so tired because we walked a lot, and we had ice cream, we had dinner, and we were just tired, waiting to just get home, wind down, relax, and we were still had people over. They were our guests in the home, but we we were all tired. So just turning the corner, I remember turning the corner and seeing the group of people outside our house and the neighbors calling my mom, "Come, come, you guys, come! Where you guys been? Your crazy neighbor burned down the house." And that, if that doesn't shock you, that I mean, you can only imagine. I mean, I was not even like 10 years old, and I remember just being in complete shock. And it's so crazy because I felt so like concerned for my mother that had to deal with this. Not only did she had family over, she had to deal with us, me and my sister, and just being, there in the moment and making decisions and taking care of us. And it was just it's a moment I never forget. And I believe when we got there, the firemen already left. So everything was open. Like I said to you guys in my previous episode, we share a house, and even so much so, it was a large house divided by into sections. So we had the bigger part of the house, and they were renting the other side with just one bedroom, but we all shared the bathroom, separate patios and all of that, but we all shared the bathroom. And I remember just getting there, thankfully, like our side of the home had light, had power, and they call us over, and the fireman was not there anymore, but they were like our doors were open, and the neighbor's house that burned down, I think they were gone by the time we got there. They were already gone, but all these people like are right outside our house. And the crazy thing is, like, it was so like public, everything that happened, and there was nobody there to kind of like not let people inside. I mean, nobody was stealing, nothing like that. We got really good neighbors. I mean, my family was in the house for years, but I remember just being so like vulnerable to that feeling of like, wow, not only did he burn the side of side of the home, we have all these people around here looking at us kind of like, it's so strange. Like, I felt so naked and so like embarrassed because now we were able to manage living with somebody like that next door for so long, but now it was so all in the public, and we were definitely affected. And I remember, like, this is me, like I said, I was not even 10 years old. I remember one thing. I remember my mom. It was late at night. And my mom said, "I'm gonna call your dad." And we were thinking, like, okay, like nothing much I could say, but like I knew my dad didn't live in the Dominican, and my dad lives in he was living here in New York City. And my mom picked up the phone and she called him, like she got somebody's phone, excuse me, to call him, and she said, and I remember that conversation that she had with my mom, that she had with my dad, and she was so upset afterwards. And here she is, a divorced mom, single parent, taking care of it, of things that are immediate need. And I said, "Mom, what did he say to you?" Because she hung up. Like, I saw her get upset and hang up right after the call. And she said, "Your dad got so angry at me. He screamed and yelled and said, 'What do you expect me to do? I'm in a different country.'" And I understand, like, for my mom, here's my mom who took care of everything we ever needed. She was a fighter. She's still a fighter. Like, she takes care of everything, and it's raising us together, having a job, a good job, like career woman, and taking care of her mom too when she got sick. And I guess sometimes, here's the thing, guys, like sometimes you call people in the moment of need, but sometimes you don't really want them to do anything for you. You just want somebody to basically be there, even if it's a mental moment. Like, a lot of the times I feel, because I get that a lot sometimes with people. This is why sometimes I just keep to myself and just deal with my problems, because a lot of the times you share a need that you have with people, and instead of just listening and just being there in that moment of need with you, for some reason people think that you you are expecting them to resolve your problem, and sometimes it's nothing like that. It's like, I understand why at that moment I didn't, but I can understand now the reason why my mom called my dad when that happened, even though he was living in a different country, even though it was late at night. Like, my mom had to deal with so much going on in that moment. Imagine, like, all of that is having so many people outside your home, the other side of the house completely burned. And thankfully, thanks to Jesus, our side of the home didn't even get burned at all. That's another thing. Like, that's how you see God working throughout the whole thing. And one thing I have to say, nothing happened to the neighbor, the crazy neighbor, the mom, or the brother. The only thing that happened that was very unfortunate was that all of the paintings, I remember him being so sad, and everybody telling us, he lost all of his work. But that's material stuff, and it's unfortunate, but thankfully, nothing really happened to nothing really happened to any of them, and we were not even home, so God even took care of that. So if in that moment where that neighbor was going crazy and decided to do what he wanted to do, we were not even home. And even if we were home, that fire didn't even reach us, even though we share a complete house. So that was that. But I remember, I think now the reason why my mom called my dad is like, I am here in this vulnerable moment. I feel so like powerless. I have nowhere to go. Like, the place where I was coming home to sleep, like, we don't even know we could stay here for the night. I have your two daughters. I have people over. Like, I just want somebody to at least guide me on what to do next. And he got upset with her and he yelled at her and said, "What do you expect me to do?" And then, and that's what I'm saying, guys. Sometimes when people call you and they're going through something, just this is just a gentle reminder. Not everybody wants you to resolve their problem. They just want you to, one, perhaps just listen to them, pray with them, and just be there with them in that moment. Because, like I always say, it takes a lot for people to ask for help. especially like independent people that never call you for anything. So if they call you at one point or another and you're gonna get upset with them, that is the worst thing you can do. But anyways, continue on with the story. Um, so I remember going to with my mom's cousin because she said, "Julie, let's go get something so we can have some food. Let's go to the nearest bodega." And I remember walking with her. The press came over. I remember the press came over, and my mom said, "I don't want any press here. We're not gonna speak with the press because of my two." Like she always thought about us first. She said, "I don't want my kids to be spoken of in their school. I don't want the classmates to know about this. I don't want them to be public that something happened in their home, especially a fire." So I remember she turning down the press. She's like, "I am not speaking to any press right now." Okay, and then, as time went on, it was like 10, 11 p.m. People started, going back to their houses. Thankfully, like I said, we were okay to go back. I know the other side of the home was uninhabitable, so they were not allowed to stay. So they immediately left, I guess, somewhere because we never saw them again. I believe they lost everything. Um, so they were just basically just like took off, and they took off to the lady's sister somewhere far in the other side of Santo Domingo. So we basically never saw them again. And I remember not really hearing from them, but in that moment when that happened, I went walk over to the bodega you know, with my mom's cousin, which is my cousin too, but I used to call her Tia. And I walked over and she said, "Let's go get something to eat so we can have breakfast or something for tomorrow." And I said to her, "I think everything's closed by now, but I know there's one that stays late open." She's like, "Okay, let's go to that one." And it was like 4 blocks away, and we walked over, got something, and came back. And when I came back, this was weird because this is why people react in the moment. When I came back, I saw a little uh I guess they call it motor concho. It's like a little scooter that came by, and I recognized the driver, and it was like, it was my uncle, right? My uncle from my dad's side, and and the husband of my aunt, so my other uncle. And I was like, "What? You guys are here?" She's like, "Oh yeah, your dad called us, and we came over, just to bring you guys some money." And I'm like, "Oh, see?" It's almost like my dad reacted in such a bad way, but then he acted up and thought about it. This is why you have to be so careful how you react in moments, especially when you let your emotions lead you. My mom got yelled at just because she called him, but then he kind of like thought about it afterwards, and then but because he had all his family there. They live far away, but this is an emergency. So I guess he made my uncles come over late at night, and they didn't live in the best neighborhood either. So they came late at night in the motor scooter, I guess you can say, and they brought us. I remember them giving cash to my mom, and they said, "This is from their dad, so that you guys can have some help now." And then they went off because it was getting late. You don't want to be around in the city so late, especially in the neighborhood where they had to go back to. But and they just came to make sure we were okay and things like that. But and it was because my dad called them, and this is why you have to be so careful how you react in a moment of emotions or whatever. Just think about it first. um so anyway, so that happened. And I guess, throughout the time the months passed by, and we were praising God, thank you God that the fire didn't come to our home. Now this crazy man no longer comes around, like he wouldn't live next to them. Thank God they were okay, but thank God they don't no longer live near us. But then something weird started happening, because at that point it was just me, my mom, my sister living in that huge house, and the other side was still, like, I guess you can say, under construction. So it was a big very big house, and it was just the three of us. And during the day, we would go to school. My mom drop us off at school and go to work, and we'll all come back all together. And during that time, rarely people would come visit, because my grandmother from my mom's side, she was in Santiago, because she got sick. And it was like, it was very empty, very quiet. And my cousin will come and visit sometimes, that she still live in Santo Domingo, but not a lot of traffic, a lot of people. But then at night, it was just me, my mom, my sister. And then what started happening was, I'm gonna say maybe 8 months afterwards, late at night, we used to hear these loud bangs coming on the other side where the crazy neighbor used to live. So on that side that it was still empty, under construction, my mom was paying this guy to help kind of like clean out the mess and repaint and redo that side. And in the middle of the night, for consecutive time, like I don't know for how many weeks, the crazy man will come and he will bang on the door like crazy. So imagine, you know, my grandfather wasn't there anymore, and imagine my mom with young girls like me and my sister. We were not even like 12 years old, because I remember that happened a couple years before we moved to the U.S. So I came to the U.S. when I was 12, so I was like around 10 years old, 9 years old, and I'm the youngest. So imagine being in bed with your two daughters in this huge house, everything locked up or whatever. In the middle of the night, you hear this banging, and the guy would yell out, Italia, Italia, and Italia was his mom's name. And I remember just having this fear of me. And, and my mom was so scared, man. My mom was so scared. And But it's almost like you see somebody being scared, but they're still ready to go into battle. Like she was so fierce within her own fear. Because I remember we would turn on the light and go by the door where he was knocking, because we were able to still walk to the other side of the house. And my mom would yell his name and say, "Get out! You need to stop doing that. She doesn't live here anymore." So a few moments will pass and he will leave, right? And we're like, okay, let's go back to bed. And then if that day he will come back half an hour after, same thing, like the banging on the door was so strong. I remember my mom took a huge wooden bar, and put it behind the door, right? The other side was locked up and was good. But then on the side that where they used to live, my mom put this huge bar behind the door with two clamps, so that in case he break open the door, he couldn't come in. And she will be saying like, you have to leave. She will call him by his name, like, they don't live here anymore, you have to leave. And that went on, guys, for a few months. So much so that my mom went to the local police, and she actually and you can hear my heater now. Come on, I hope you don't have to hear that. But my mom went and got the local police, and she said, I live with my two daughters by myself, and we're having this situation. And they're like, we gotta catch him when he's doing it. We have no evidence. We want to catch him when he's doing it. So my mom, they were able to do for her was, they sent a policeman to sleep over a couple nights there. And he was not sleeping, like it was not for leash, like he was just staying in, I think my mom gave him my grandmother's room. And the crazy thing, guys, is that you think people will be concerned with you and see that the situation that you're in. Every single time, I think the cop came maybe like within a week. He came like 3 times just to sleep there, to see how, if this guy comes in the middle of the night. Every single time the cop was spending just the night there, to see how this man comes and disturbs our night in our home. The guy never came back. The crazy guy never came back those nights. And then he will come the next night when the cop was not there. And we were like, what is going on? And because, there's, people speak and they talk around. So eventually we found out that some of the other neighbors were telling the guy, don't go this night because they do have a policeman sleeping there waiting to catch you. I mean, are you kidding me? You think people are like want the best for you? Let me tell you guys, even if they see you in the moment, like we went through that fire, my mom is on her own taking care of two young girls. Like, she doesn't have a man in the house. The police is doing the only thing they could do is to catch these guys, to send somebody, and that costs money just to have that policeman there. My my uncles, like, they live here in the US, because I remember my mom would say a lot. She said, man, if your uncle was here, this would never happen. um she will always say that to me. And then at one point, it's so crazy, because at one point my mom said to me, Julie, I'm a little afraid to have this policeman here. I said, what are you talking about? He's here for protection. She said, yeah, but he has a gun. Like, he has a gun, and you don't know what could happen. I don't know this man. So even though, he's a policeman, I remember seeing him in uniform, and very, I didn't really speak with him. He was very professional. He just came to do a job. My mom still had some type of doubt, but God is always on top of all of that stuff. But anyways, so the policeman stopped going. He said, I understand the situation you're going in, but we sent our guide over. Excuse me, we sent our guy over. He never caught the guy. So not really much we can do here until we see him doing the stuff that you say he's doing. And that's it. So some of the other neighbors were concerned that if the police caught this crazy guy banging the door, he might be locked up. But they didn't think about the fact that this man, this crazy guy, was coming, probably drunk in the middle of the night, to disturb our peace. And my mom was by herself with two young girls. They didn't even think about that. They were just more concerned about the other guy that was loose on the streets, doing crazy things. You don't know what. And it was just so crazy to me to go through something like that. And not mostly for me, because I was still a child, but just to see my mom deal with that was so crazy. And then what ended up happening eventually, was he actually got caught by the police, and he was put into a place for, I guess you can call it like, behavioral place. I'm not sure, I don't have the word right now to say what it is, but in Spanish it's called manicomio. And eventually, we this case had gone crazy, because he got let go of that place, because he probably escaped or something. They don't really have, in those days in the Dominican Republic, they only have one place for people who had mental issues like that, who were violent and things like that. And eventually, he stopped coming, and then we learned that he actually got caught by the police and was put into a crazy house, right? A house for people who have behavioral problems, and they have a psychiatric place. And what ended up happening was that there is a big famous person there in the Dominican Republic, very well known though. She still does her show. Her name is Nuria, and she did a show, and one of our neighbors actually went and spoke about him on the Nuria show. This is how big this case was. And she said, you went to Manicomio one time, to the psychiatric place one time, and you were doing an interview about the condition of this place. And this is the same guy who's asking you for $5 to get cigarettes. And she's like, are you serious? She said, yeah, this is the man who burned out that house, who comes in the middle of the night, and who's out loose on the street, and we don't want him to come back to the neighborhood. So I remember that guy, he actually went on TV and spoke about it, right? And she played back a video where she saw him in the manicomio. And Noria Piera was a very well known um very well known reporter in the Dominican Republic. She has her own TV show for years. You know, I love watching her stuff. And, you know, she's got so many awards and things like that. So one of our neighbors went and sat down and spoke with her, and she said, this neighbor did so many crazy things now, and we don't want him back. Apparently he's actually loose, and he escaped the psychiatric place, and we don't want him coming back to the neighborhood or whatever. And she's like, and he's like, you know, one time you went and did a show on that psychiatric place and looking at the conditions. And Nuria is known to be very fierce. Like she will go into places that not a lot of people will go, and not a lot of news people will go to. And as she's walking by the place, there comes that crazy neighbor, and is tapping her on the shoulder. This is the lady going around with a microphone doing an interview of the place, and he goes and taps on her on the shoulder and say, "Hey, can I have $5 for cigarettes?" And she's like, you know, I don't know what she responded, but they played that video while my other neighbor was on the TV show of Nuria, so that she knows who we are speaking about. And she said, "Oh wow, that is him." He goes, "Yeah, that's the guy who comes over and does all these crazy things. He been in the neighborhood for a while, but then you know he burned down his house. His family had to move out, but then he comes in the middle of the night and does these crazy things to this family," you know, referring to me and my mom. So eventually, that was put on the news. My mom, like I said before, always protecting us. She said, "I don't want my kids on TV. I don't want them names being said. I don't want our names being said." So it was when we saw. I remember watching that on TV and saying, "Oh wow, they didn't really mention us." And then now I realize it was actually on purpose. You know, even though we were part of such a big part of that story, none of our names, our family name, nothing was said about us. And that's the reason, because my mom didn't want any of that, because she didn't want us to be bullied at school. She didn't want us to have some type of reputation about that. When you know, we were so young, and everybody knows everybody in that. I mean, we grew up in that neighborhood, so that is the reason. But I guess what ended up happening to this crazy neighbor, I guess you can call it, was what we learned. Because you know, then after that, you know, he never came back. Actually, he never came back to knock on the door, to bang the door. He never came back. um like I said, we witnessed that many times. Especially it was like around 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, consistently. Like this guy will come every time. He would never come though when the policeman was there. And that was the reason somebody was telling him not to go, because he was going to get arrested. Because he said they will say to him, you know, they have somebody over there waiting for you. So that's how you think people have the best interest in you. A lot of the times they don't. But anyways, later on throughout the years, we learned that he actually passed away. Okay, and his mom also passed, but you know, his brother, the painter, he's still very well alive and still doing artwork. And you know, like I said, I had such a great experience with him, because he helped me with the art project one time, and I was so like fascinated, because he's so talented. So I will never forget that moment. And you know, I really wish him the best. But I gotta tell you guys, these are the stories that shape you for who you are. And then you see how much your mom is, you appreciate your mom even more, how much she had to go through, you know, and the whole family having to deal with somebody like that, and just never know what could happen. I guess you can never know. But um it's so crazy. But even when that fire happened, we saw God take care of that, because we shared a wall with those people, and that fire never even touched the wall. It was so crazy. And just as the neighbor was, you know, he needed help. He had mental issues. He needed help. But he grew up older. The mom didn't take care of that. She just basically babied him and never took care of his mental status, and look what happened. He burned the entire house down. Thank you guys so much for listening to my podcast. I hope you share and come back and listen to more stories of my life. Have a good night, everybody. God bless.